Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to this news conference. I am so pleased to be joined by my fellow city leaders, Council Members Roy Christensen, Sandra Washington, Richard McGinnis, Jane Raybould, Tammy Ward, and James Michael Bowers, along with our Lincoln Police Chief, Jeff Blymeister. Joining us as well today is interpreter Margie Prop, and thank you, Margie, for providing your services to make our conferences more accessible to all. On March 17th, I sat at my desk in City Hall and signed my name in blue ink on a grant application to the Department of Justice for 5 new police officers. I signed my name on that grant application because those new officers would enable our Lincoln Police Department to mitigate gun violence in our community by reducing suicides committed with firearms, reducing assaults and domestic violence incidents involving firearms, and reducing the chances of a mass shooting. I signed my name knowing that LPD has a strong history of partnering with local organizations to connect residents to resources, such as mental health services and domestic victim assistance, and that the proposal would enhance LPD's long-standing partnerships with Voices of Hope, Centerpoint, Friendship Home, and the Child Advocacy Center, and the Nebraska Mental Health Association, all of whom supported this grant application. I signed my name knowing that at 353 authorized sworn officers, LPD is among the smallest law enforcement agencies per jurisdiction size in the entire nation, with a per capita police officer ratio that is half the national average. I signed my name knowing that because LPD's team is so lean, fewer police are available when incidents occur, putting our residents and our officers at risk in emergency and often dangerous situations. And I signed my name knowing how deeply committed our officers are to providing protection and safety for all our community members, and knowing that they aspire to and consistently deliver an excellent level of service for our community. That's why today I am pleased to announce with my colleagues that the federal government agreed with the need we described in our proposal and has officially awarded Lincoln a COPS grant totaling $625,000. As required by the Department of Justice, we will match the grant award with $150,000 included in the budget I proposed to the City Council in June. We anticipate hiring the 5 new officers for the class that will begin their training in January of 2021. The duties of the 5 officers include reviewing handgun purchase permits to keep firearms out of the hands of individuals who are not legally allowed to possess them due to mental illness, suicidal concerns, conviction of a domestic violence crime, or having been served a protection order. Using ballistics technology to solve crime. Working to prevent illegal firearm sales. Conducting threat assessments to prevent mass shootings. And working with community partners to educate residents about gun safety and ways to reduce gun violence. And while these important police duties are not the focus of our community's attention right now, the need for LPD to perform them is still present. This grant provides us with an opportunity to develop some of the solutions that move us toward where the community wants us to be, toward greater safety and security for all residents. It's important to continually remind ourselves that this is the goal that we all share and are seeking, greater safety and security for all. Adding more police officers is not an end, it is a means of achieving that goal. And I firmly believe that adding officers to perform the particular duties I mentioned will enhance Lincoln's safety and well-being. This is why we applied for the grant and why we are pleased to receive it. We are proud of the Lincoln Police Department and incredibly grateful for the essential public service they provide to keep our community safe. And while it makes sense to follow through with the plans that we made 4 months ago and use this grant to implement good and important public safety strategies in Lincoln, it's also important that we acknowledge how much has happened, how much our community has been through, and what we have heard and learned since early March, and most especially in the last 2 months. In addition to experiencing a global pandemic that has disrupted our lives and livelihoods, we have joined in a significant and vital public conversation about racism, inequity, and cultural division in American society. We are listening, and the conversation has influenced what we believe we should do to achieve our vision to ensure a more successful, secure, and shared future for everyone in Lincoln. We previously have announced initiatives to bridge across social divides, and our reviews of city policies and practices through an equity lens are underway. Today, we are announcing $150,000 in additional funding for crisis response, social services, and mental health resources that work in collaboration with the police department. LPD's nationally accredited community policing approach relies on relationships with residents and valued partners to produce public safety outcomes that do not rely entirely on a traditional police response. The chief will speak to this more in depth in a moment, but as one example, LPD's decades-long partnership with the Mental Health Association of Nebraska has enabled LPD to refer over 1,000 individuals for mental health services, reducing crisis calls, and the number of our community members taken into emergency protective custody or jail. LPD values these partnerships, particularly in the face of escalating mental health calls for service. We have heard from community members how important it is to allocate city resources to these services in service of that broader goal of community safety and prevention, which is why we intend to convene a team of community mental health professionals, crisis responders, other social service providers, and LPD to analyze and identify ways for this additional funding to enhance public safety throughout our community. It's not coincidental that we are announcing both of these investments today. We want to make it clear that we do not have to choose between supporting the work of the Lincoln Police and supporting the calls for equity and justice in the fullest sense. We can and must acknowledge and address uncomfortable and painful truths about what it means to be Black in America and support our excellent police department. We must work to realize the vision of a community where people of every race and culture feel a true sense of security and belonging. And at this time, I would like to invite Councilmember Roy Christensen up to add a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to be here today to talk about this COPS grant that will add 5 police officers to our force. Public safety is the #1 priority and responsibility for our city leaders. Funding for additional officers helps the Lincoln Police Department deliver on their mission to promote a safe and secure community. Today, we're doing the right thing. More well-trained police on our streets will, in our neighborhoods, and investigating criminal behavior will keep Lincoln safe for families, seniors, and businesses. A safe community with adequate police protection is vital for Lincoln to grow and for our citizens to thrive. Lincoln, Nebraska is the envy of most communities around the country for our police department and their long-standing tradition of community policing and their innovative approach to dealing with mental health issues that has benefited everyone in our city. So, to the officers of the Lincoln Police Department, I say this: I've got your back. To the citizens of Lincoln, I say this: the Lincoln Police Department has yours.
Thank you, Councilmember Christensen. And next, I'd like to invite Chief Blymeister to the podium to talk more about the grant and community policing here in Lincoln. Chief?
Good afternoon, and first and foremost, I want to extend my thanks and the thanks of the Lincoln Police Department to members of the council who are all here today and to the mayor for your support of the Lincoln Police Department's efforts to work with the community to prevent firearm violence and enhance our life-saving partnerships in crisis response with advocacy organizations that do such great work across our community. The duties of the police officers hired through the COPS hiring program grant will involve completing complex follow-up, much of which is currently being done by officers working on our 5 geographic teams. This coordinated, multifaceted work will prevent crime and bring justice to those impacted by firearms violence. It is our belief and my belief that this staffing model will also lead to a reduction in committed responsibilities for our patrol officers, giving them additional time to build on LPD's decades-long approach to building relationships in advance of tragedy and working with the members, the people in our neighborhoods. The additional officers will focus on violence prevention and improving crisis response, and these are core elements of community policing. We continue to work with experts to problem-solve issues, enhance safety in the neighborhoods, preserve human life, and work together to improve the quality of life for every citizen of Lincoln. LPD's policies and strategies are based upon best practices and rely heavily on data analysis. Crime trend data and in-depth incident analysis were the foundation of the COPS grant that was signed in May and planned for back in August of 2019. Our project focus is rooted in evidence-based practices, beginning with the Police Executive Research Forum and their evaluation of how to reduce firearms violence in our communities. Our partnership with the Mental Health Association through the REAL program has been evaluated, it's peer-reviewed, and published research shows that program participants experience a decrease in mental health calls for service and the number of times that they would have to be placed in emergency protective custody. So once again, my appreciation to all of you, to our staff, and the community for their continued support of our organization.
Thank you, Chief. And next, I'd like to invite Councilmember Sandra Washington.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chief Bleimeister. I appreciate his words on partnership. I know from my work on the Human Services Joint Budget Committee and my conversations with real program leaders, the effectiveness of that program and that team here in Lincoln. Today is another demonstration of our dedication to increasing resources for this partnership, both in personnel and in programming. I'm particularly interested in exploring additional ways to connect people in need to help. We know that 24/7 crisis help is not always just a call to 911. Lincoln is blessed to have Centerpoint, Voices of Hope, and other similar organizations that staff crisis lines 24 hours a day. And with additional funding, I look forward to discussing how we can create further opportunities and options to connect 911 callers to help, and what also can be done to offer other connection points. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Washington. Council Chair Richard McGinnis will speak next, followed by Councilmember Jane Raybold, who would also like to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to keep this real quick and short. As Chair of the City Council, I'm really pleased to see all of us here today, united in our support for additional police officers and for support programs that's going to help Lincoln Police Department continue to be the excellent police department that they have been for many years. So again, I want to thank our council members and the mayor to continue with this program and keep moving forward with help to our police department. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, and my colleagues on the City Council. As I said earlier this week in our City County Commons meeting, the Council remains committed to public safety and law enforcement. It's a false choice to say we fund law enforcement at the expense of other priorities like mental health services. These things have to be funded together to achieve the outcomes we all want to see. A perfect example that my colleagues have spoken about is the funding that LPD provides for the Mental Health Association's REAL program. That started when the funding came from the Community Health Endowment, and it was continued to be funded by them when I was on the Lancaster County Board of Commissioners, and it continued to be funded by them. This is such a perfect example that LPD has continued and is committed to provide funding for the Mental Health Association REAL program. The REAL program works closely with law enforcement to offer de-escalation training and a recovery model of care and support with the help of trained peer specialists. A peer specialists are individuals themselves struggling and managing their own behavioral health issues that have become certified to assist in tough situations. LPD has doubled the amount of funding within this budget because they know the value of that partnership. By both adding officers and providing even more funding for more innovative programs and connections, we will continue to improve health and safety within our community. Black Lives Matter. It has been a challenging time. It has been a very long journey for so many, especially our neighbors of color. The good news is that we hear you, and together we are on the right path. I thank the peaceful protesters for their awareness raising. I thank law enforcement for all their tremendous efforts at restoring trust. I thank our elected officials here with us today for their commitment to building bridges and policies that reform our criminal justice system. It is one of the many things that makes our community great: the dialogue, the outreach, and the determination to be better and do better by always listening to each other and working collaboratively and cooperatively together to achieve the outcomes we all want to see. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you to the city council members and to the Lincoln Police Department and to our chief for their hard work on this effort. Our unity in moving our community forward is essential as we work through the issues and challenges that we face here in Lincoln. I am pleased to include these items as part of our draft budget, and I look forward to working with the council on further collaborative efforts. And I'd also like to remind everyone that the public hearing on the city's budget is Monday, August 3rd, beginning at 3 p.m. Additional details on options for testifying will be published in advance and communicated by our other fellow city leaders in council chambers. And at this time, I'd be happy to open it up for questions.
Mayor, I have one right off the bat. I'm not sure this is, they want to know the source of the additional $150,000 for mental health crisis and how that's going to be.
Okay. The question is where the source of the additional funding and how it will be spent. And as we mentioned in the remarks, that we are set aside this funding and convening a team of experts in mental health services, social services, other crisis response, along with LPD, to develop strategies that they believe will be most effective in promoting the safety and security of our community. That $150,000 is coming from general revenue, and at this time we assume that that will be contingency funding. But the budget is in progress, and by the end of the summer that will be set.
Riley at the Journal-Star. Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yep. Hi, Riley.
Hi. Just a quick follow-up to that. So, in more being more plain spoken, you would use currently unallocated money that's in the cash reserve in the upcoming budget to program it towards the services.
Cash reserve and contingency are actually different, but yes, it is currently money that is not allocated for other services in the city budget.
Thank you. Second question, what crystallized to bring you to this decision? I know, and why not make it sooner? Because of that recognition of the need for this work.
Well, we have, of course, a dynamic budget process, and so much of it is about listening to our community. And while we are very clear on the needs, we are not always clear on what our citizens' priorities are. And by listening, we understand what they are calling for. And right now we have a lot of people calling for a lot of different things. And so listening to what people who are participating in the budget process in many instances for the first time, what they're asking for, we have spent weeks listening to determine that many of those calls are about mental health services. And it's been an opportunity both to educate our community about the incredible partnerships that the Lincoln Police Department has with mental health service providers, and an opportunity to address those concerns directly with more funding, and to recognize that this is a collaborative effort, that we need both additional police officers to provide safety and security for our community and additional social services to address particular needs that arise. You know, mental health service has traditionally been something that's been provided at the state level, through the region, and through county services. And Councilwoman Raybold referenced the work of the county. And we have a joint effort through our JBC, the Joint Budget Committee, with the county. What we've seen as funds at the state and region and county level have diminished over time is that there's increasingly a need at the local level to provide response. And that has been something that we've seen in our calls for service to the Lincoln Police Department. And they are there 24/7, ready to respond when people are in crisis. And they are the first to acknowledge how important it is to partner with specialists who can meet the needs of our community members in crisis. So we are really pleased to see how this effort makes perfect sense for Lincoln.
Hi, Mayor. It's Madison with 1011. I have a question for you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, hi, Madison.
Hi. So that $150,000 that's going to crisis response social services, can you give me an example of what specifically that would go to? Are there programs already?
Right. It very well could be something, the decision and recommendation from the panel of folks who are going to come together to make recommendations could be that we augment the partnership with the Mental Health Association. Or it could be that they identify other programs across the country that they think could have application and impact here in Lincoln, Nebraska. But what's important about convening these individuals is that they are intimately familiar with local conditions and will be able to address local needs with an appropriate response. And we're going to take the time to make sure that that is an appropriate and effective local response.
Mayor, I have a question for the Chief of Police.
Yep, we'll be right here.
Yes, Riley.
Hi, Chief. Just to clarify for folks, the proposed work that these grant funded officers would do, how does it compare to what's already being done? Is it an expansion and some new programming that those officers would be doing to reduce gun violence and make those investigations?
Yeah, great question. It is going to be an expansion. So much of this work is being done. Some of it is being done as ancillary duties to officers on the street when we talk about some of the testing of recovered firearm casings. When we talk about focused investigations on prevention of suicide, prevention of firearms violence. So really it is going to be this collaborative approach based upon research that was done with PERF, the Police Executive Research Forum. And then there's also this expanded thing that I think is just built upon a foundation of community policing that we've been involved with since the 1970s. And it's working with businesses to identify and prevent violence that could occur in the future. And we're really, really excited about this opportunity.
And a budget question. So essentially both the 150 that would go towards the grant as the local match component, that will be in the proposed budget along with the 150. Is this both coming from police department or is that general fund allocated?
Good question. So I want to make sure and separate these things out. We have grant funding dollars that are going to come to the Lincoln Police Department from the Department of Justice, and that's what the mayor referenced. The match for the first year, which is going to be approximately $150,000, beginning with the hiring of officers in January of 2021. So it's going to pay for their wages, their salaries, or excuse me, their benefits. And then we're going to, once they've been trained, and again, we know that this takes at least 22 weeks in the academy and approximately another 22 weeks in the field training. So then we will backfill with experienced officers to fill these roles that we're talking about. So we have the grant funding, we have the $150,000 in general fund match for year one, and then, as the mayor has talked about, we have an additional $150,000 that is coming from unallocated funding to bolster and responses that's going to improve the quality of life of people in our community that are struggling with mental illness. Does that clarify, Riley?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any further questions? All right, well, I want to thank once again our city leaders for helping to find a way forward to bring unity in our community as we all pursue the shared value of safety and security for all our residents. Thank you very much for tuning in.